Geoff, man.
Welcome, everyone, to the show which apparently never ends, otherwise known as The Wonderland, or perhaps even 20 minutes of your life that you'll never, ever get back. That's nonsense, of course. The show does end after the 20 minutes is over, obviously, but, it might be more accurate to call it the boomerang. Not because I'm Australian, but because it keeps coming back every 2 weeks. Is that a bad thing? Or is that a good thing? Quite honestly, people, I have absolutely no idea, and I'm not really in a position to say, because I don't have to listen to it, I just have to create it. But I can honestly say that I do enjoy doing the show, and apparently a few of you out there also enjoy listening to it, so what the hell, I'll keep it going for as long as I still have a pulse and half a brain. So far so good, it seems. Anyway, speaking of still having a pulse, I was on a tram in Zurich a while ago when I happened to casually glance up at the emergency safety information sticker thingy on the window, where it mentioned the SOS emergency number, or something like that. Now, before I get carried away with this, I think we need to put this subject under the appropriate spotlight for closer examination. And we have, at our disposal, just such a spotlight here. And that's theory time.
Yo, you can't know what you can't know. I'm going to tell you what I think I know. And I know what I know. This is what I know. Theory time.
And welcome to Theory Time, where my personal take on something is displayed for your consideration, amusement, derision, or dancing pleasure, depending on what floats your particular boat, so to speak. Anyway, back to this SOS emergency number sticker on the tram window in Zurich. The thing that struck me about this, but fortunately not hard enough to cause any injury, was the SOS anagram. And yes, we know what it means and why it exists, but I wonder if we've ever really thought through the words that it stands for. Save our souls. I mean, if you want your soul saved, shouldn't you be looking for a church rather than someone to physically rescue you from a hazardous situation? And here's the thing. Looking at this from a religious perspective, if you get rescued from that hazardous situation, it's pretty likely that your soul was either in mortal peril anyway or not before that moment. And so the fire brigade or the police or the ambulance people coming along and saving your life is not apparently going to make any difference to what happens to your soul. Unless, of course, the officer attending the rescue just happens to be an ordained minister who is able to absolve you of your sins before you croak. And then you'd have to be Roman Catholic, because I don't think that stuff works on Protestants or people of other spiritual persuasions, as far as I know. Anyway, look, I would like to suggest that we come up with something other than SOS. Something else. What about something like HELP ? Okay, I know it's one extra letter, but at least it's a word. And I think it would make a hell of a lot more sense to the English-speaking world. And as for the rest of the world, well, they can just get used to it like they got used to SOS, can't they? I would have thought so. But there will be those who won't be very keen on this theory, however. Two which spring readily to mind would be ABBA, who had a huge hit with a song called SOS, and Sting, who wrote a song called Message in a Bottle, containing the very memorable line, sending out an SOS. Then again, the Beatles hit pay dirt with a song called Help, and even went as far as to make a movie of the same name. So I think musically, battle lines over this issue have already been drawn, whether anybody realises it or not. Now, some of you might reasonably say to me something like, Geoff, if it's not broken, why fix it? And that's absolutely fair enough. As a man, and ladies, I think most of you will agree with this, I have an uncontrollable desire to fix things. And I do not necessarily mean actual physical things around the house, because I'm completely useless at that. as my wife knows full well. But I do feel the need to at least suggest these useful alternatives for outdated or archaic expressions, which I think we need to change up to something befitting the highly advanced and increasingly questionable civilization we live in. And quite frankly, the word help seems perfectly appropriate to me.
This is what I know. Theory time.
And that's today's helpful edition of Theory Time, all done and dusted. We are now at the part of the show where it's time to hear some music that you've probably never heard before and from someone you've probably never heard of, which to some of you might not seem particularly interesting, but bear in mind, even the most famous musical artists in history were, at some time, completely unknown. So, this could be a defining moment, or not. Anyway, today we're going to hear a song from Loftus, the brainchild of English singer-songwriter-producer, super nice guy Mark C. Cole. It's off the new album Northern Tales, and this one is called All of Your Love. Take a listen.
I'm in love with you 'cause you give all you to me. You make everything sweet. Been with you so long, sometimes it goes wrong. I couldn't be well without you for long. You make me feel good, like everyone should. I hope you feel the same. It would be a shame to lose what we got. I'm ready or not. All of your love, all of your love. Everything that I wanna give, giving everything that I wanna do for you. For your love, all of your love. Everything that I wanna give, giving everything that I wanna do for you. For your love. Some people run from some love that goes wrong, and I'd be running still if I lost the way. The closer people get, they slip through the net. It's easier to say they got in the way. And you're my best friend. You give me the strength to be myself and nobody else. 'Cause I'm in love with you and you give all of your love, all of your everything that I wanna give, giving everything that I wanna do for you. For your love, all of your love, everything that I wanna give, giving everything that I wanna do for you. For your love, all of your love. All of your love, all of your love. Giving everything that I wanna give, giving everything that I wanna do for you. For your love. Giving everything that I wanna give, giving everything that I wanna do for you. For your love. Giving everything that I wanna give, giving everything that I wanna do for you. For your love.
And that's All of Your Love from Loftus. And you can hear the rest of Northern Tales and other Loftus music on any of the major music streaming platforms. So check it out. Now, if you're a regular listener to The Wonderland, you will be aware by now that the tone of the show isn't exactly, how can I put this, serious, for the most part. And our next segment confirms this once and for all. So let's get stupid with some more.
Good times with Big Geoff
And Little Kev. Kevin, let me be the first to welcome you to Good Times and to say how good it is
Oh my God, Geoff, that's so. It's so nice, man. It's so great to be here, wherever here is. It's great to be here
in cyberspace.
We need some. Can you put reverb or is it like delay, like cyberspace, space? That would be great.
See, that was great. That was like analog, digital, whatever there.
Geoff, can we get to it? We're limited, man. We're always limited by time. What do you want to say? What is it? What are we doing?
Okay, what I want to say. I want to ask you this. I want to ask you, why do people say stuff like, I can't honestly tell you such and such and such and such? Why do they have to put the word honestly in there? I mean, do they think they can dishonestly tell us and that would be okay? I mean, come on, Kev, bring some of your wisdom in. Bring it in, man. Bring it in. Beep, beep,
so back it in.
Bring it in, back it in. Come on.
Exactly. Well, I think it's like a reassuring themselves that what they're saying is true.
Okay. So if that's true, and I'm with you completely on this, that would mean that person believes that somewhere in their mind there's a possibility that they could dishonestly tell that person whatever.
Well, I think in general they are dishonest. So that's why they have to say they're honest. So it beeps them up a little bit, makes them feel good for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You know.
But I think it's also a tell. It's a tell, Kevin.
Like when somebody it's a tell. Also when somebody says, they're telling a story and I really mean this, you know. Do you? So you didn't mean anything beforehand, or what? You know what I mean?
That's exactly right. Now, I actually got that from you years ago because
really?
I remember one of your greatest, one of your greatest comedic points used to be if I'd said something like, well, let me honestly tell you, and you'd say something like, can you dishonestly tell me first? Because that'd make it interesting.
Did I really say that?
You used to say things like that, which I found quite amusing.
Yeah, I can't imagine I was that intelligent, really, ever.
No, it never will be. But it was interesting nonetheless. And I can honestly tell you that I found it interesting. And dishonestly, I could tell you a lot of things that just wouldn't be true, and that would be okay as well. That would be okay.
Dishonestly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Imagine, like, dishonestly, I really find you a terrific person.
Or imagine, I got an even better one. Yeah, try this, saying, look, to be perfectly dishonest, I find you an absolutely awful, ugly person. And if the other person is really listening, they will say, oh, that's very sweet of you. Thank you so much. Because they will have heard you say dishonest. And that will mean it's the opposite.
So when you say dishonest, it means it's the complete opposite, right?
Yes. So from now on...
That's interesting, isn't it?
Kevin, I want you and all of our listeners to go out into the world, to go forth, to go up to your friends, for example, and instead of saying, look, I honestly think blah, 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 get the opposite and go, I dishonestly think blah, 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 blah. And see if
you can also just go and see if what happens.
What, you mean just go...
See what happens.
Like, yeah, but that wouldn't be any fun, Kevin, because without words, there are no fun. There is no fun.
Yeah. There are
I
no
just said
fun.
there are no...
Without words,
there are no
fun.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, sorry, folks. I'm a bit...
What is that?
It's early in the morning, Kevin, is what it is. Now, I'm going to briefly touch on another one, which we are going to touch on very much in the next episode.
There's a lot of touching going on
here.
here.
Of touching, yeah, absolutely.
Is that a bit of a touchstone?
Okay,
then?
a bit of a touchstone. Now, Kevin, it's basically... Do you know what a deity is? A deity?
The word, it's not a nidety. It's not a nidety, so it must be a deity.
Yeah, I should have. Yeah.
Nidety.
Why did
it's the opposite. You're talking about opposites.
I am, yeah.
So nidety.
Okay,
if you
the
had
opposite.
a couple of drinks in,
do you know what
it would sound like this.
Nidety. And the other person goes, nidety to you too. Anyway, so...
I was out yesterday, and I wasn't sure if it was nidety or deity.
Okay, there you go. All right, no, but seriously, Kev, a deity.
Okay,
a deity is like
somebody who's like a king or a queen. There's a deity, sort of,
but it's in this case, let's call it a god. Yeah. So anyway, Kev, no, what I'm talking about is more like a god. A god is, for example, in Christianity, you've got Jesus, for example, God. And all of the, like Buddhism, you've got Buddha, and in Islam you have Muhammad, and like all of these religions have their, their God, or their leaders. Now, these are known as deities, right? So here's my thought.
They're leaders.
If I reckon, I would like to start a religion and have the deity called Trevor.
Right.
Trevor. And the reason for this, Kevin, I'll tell you why. Because I think let's have a normal name. And after all,
Why,
the
Trevor?
major religions,
Trevor.
none of them are opposed to people naming themselves after their particular deity. Like there are guys called Jesus, lots of guys called Muhammad that I know and that you know, and there are people called Buddha, there are people called Shiva, and there are probably also people called, for all I know, Yahweh or Jehovah. They're probably,
right.
No, maybe not, but I don't know. There could be. But the thing is, let's do it the other way around. Let's come up with a deity first,
Jehovah, yeah.
Trevor, and then start a religion called, I don't know,
we don't know.
Trevorism. What does it signify? What are the principles of the religion? It doesn't really matter. Truck driving could be, truck driving, plumbing.
Trevor.
What do you think, Kev, about that concept? Do you think it's wrong? It could be wrong.
Oh, my God,
Let's
man.
talk about this more on
You
the
know
next
what,
episode.
Geoff?
Because I think we have to.
I think you're right.
Good times with Big Geoff
And Little Kev. And Little Kev and myself will be strapped to the microphones once again in 2 weeks' time for more weird and wonderful wisdom on the next edition of Good Times. Humans are undeniably inventive. We're also reinventive, as in we have an uncontrollable urge to reinvent things to suit changing times. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and I think you would agree, and I think it's absolutely fair enough. But I think this tendency has led us to an age in which life often seems like one big fat competition, because it pretty much is. And with all that in mind, we're now going to stumble carelessly into our next regular segment, namely
Geoff's Thought of the Day.
I was thinking about something, I think it was the thought of the day. I think it was the thought of the day.
And welcome to Thought of the Day. Just as I have often been rightly accused by my kids of being inclined to make a sandwich out of pretty much anything, I have come to the conclusion that humans are destined to make a competition out of everything. Now, I think this goes way back to prehistoric times when the concept of survival of the fittest could be taken very literally, and competition for just about everything was pretty much a necessity/foregone conclusion. You know, two hungry humans, each armed with a stick, fighting to the death over an apple or a chicken, that sort of thing. But my big question for today really is, are we addicted to competition? Is life a competition? I guess the essence of my rhetorical question is whether we're subconsciously competing with everybody around us a great deal of the time, whether we need to or not. As a musician, it's always bothered me that something creative and subjective, like music, art, or entertainment, can be turned into a competition involving winners and losers. This is also why I have absolutely no desire to watch or be involved in anything remotely resembling The Voice, The X Factor, Idol, or any other contrived reality TV thing, ultimately designed to make buckets of money for its creators, and of course the network, whilst pretending to be altruistically promoting unheralded talent. Now, I'm going to resist the risk of digressing at this point and banging on about just how fundamentally awful I find these shows to be, but I just wanted to mention that as an example of why we might even be, at a genetic level, addicted to competition in areas where it's not appropriate, not necessary, and sometimes socially counterproductive. In non-subjective and more easily quantifiable areas, such as sports, intellect, and making money, competition is not only inevitable, but mandatory, and so obviously I can't really have any problem with that. But what about life? You know, just being a person, born into a particular body, into a social environment, in a particular place, raised under particular circumstances, and subjected for quite a few years to elements and situations beyond your control. Now, that doesn't sound to me much like you're in training for anything except perhaps 80 or so years of being on planet Earth and having a pulse. And yet, there's often this subliminal suggestion, born out of whatever, but exploited very successfully by manufacturers of fashion items, as in everything from clothes to cars, that we must compete with one another. And so I give you the Bling Olympics, in which we constantly joust with one another on the level of appearing flashier, trendier, cooler, and more fashionable, regardless of the cost and effort involved. Now that's a competition, a duel of sorts, isn't it? Not exactly to the death, but probably quite often to the impoverishment. In the Bling Olympics, though, there are no gold medals or silver medals or bronze medals or any tangible rewards at all, other than the feeling that we might be perceived by some as momentarily of more value than someone else. Until a bit of time passes, of course, and suddenly we've been eclipsed by someone else again. Seems a bit of a waste of time, doesn't it? On the other hand, I suppose it doesn't involve being hit over the head with a stick.
I think it was the thought of the day.
And that was indeed thought of the day, and we've come to the end of our Wonderland rainbow for yet another fortnight, although, sadly, no pot of gold seems to have turned up yet. Anyway, thanks as always for your company on today's show, folks, and thanks to Little Kev for taking time out of his busy schedule to help us make our Good Times segment the legendary phenomenon of improvisational stupidity that it is. We certainly couldn't have done it without him. And of course, I'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode, so take care of yourselves and one another until we meet again, right here on The Wonderland.
Gonna get back to just Wonderland.